Morning, Dan and Amy. Trump in Saudi Arabia over the weekend had this to say to the assembled Arab leaders, including the Saudi royal family, about terrorism.
Still much work to be done. That means honestly confronting the crisis of Islamic extremism and the Islamists and Islamic terror of all kinds.
And if you don't?
If you choose the path of terror, your life will be empty, your life will be brief, and your soul will be fully condemned. And political leaders must speak out to affirm the same idea. Heroes don't kill innocents, they save them.
That was
almost biblical.
That was not unclear.
Yeah.
Very pointed, salient remarks from the president, explained in greater detail by H.R. McMaster, Trump's national security advisor, when he was on with Clinton Foundation donor Zero turned objective journalist George Stephanopoulos over the weekend. And he said this about the Saudis, understanding the Saudis' role, at least willful blindness with respect to the 9/11 killers, 9/11 terrorists. But in terms of, is there a shift in the Saudis? Is there potential here to rebalance power in the Middle East so it's not so decidedly with the Iranians?
But I think the willingness to talk about it is somewhat different than it has been in the past. And as you know, the record is poor, going back to the 60s and 70s and beyond, and even today. And so what we need to convene leaders across all religions, and this is a big theme of this trip, is to promote tolerance and cooperation across all religions to identify these terrorists for who they are, the enemies of all civilized people, irreligious criminals who use a perverted interpretation of religion to advance their criminal and political agendas. And that's the tone and tenor of the conversations that occurred today, which I think is encouraging. Now, there have to be concrete steps taken. Funding has to be cut off to these madrasas and mosques that are fomenting hatred and intolerance. Funding has to be cut off to terrorist organizations through effective threat finance measures, and that's a big part of the initiative as well.
He was basically telling the Muslim world, turn in your own if there is bad behavior, nefarious behavior, to do something. But he sounded presidential. He looked presidential. I felt that he had our best interest at heart, as an American president, and I appreciated that. But it was so strange because on the campaign trail, he proposed the Muslim ban, so it was weird to see him snuggling up to the Muslim world, so to speak, after he had made that ban.
I wouldn't call it snuggling up, and I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think you can reestablish American ties with the Saudis as a counterweight to the Iranians, still take a hard line on terrorism, still protect and enhance our relationship with our one true ally in the Middle East. That's, of course, Israel, where he is today. And also protect our national sovereignty with some kind of system we can have confidence in that distinguishes people attempting to come to this country from those who are peaceful pluralists as compared to those who seek to do other people harm. I think it's a balancing act, to be sure, but I think all of those are complementary postures, not postures that are in conflict with one another. But let's get an expert in on the topic. He is our friend, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. He is the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and he's also the author of the book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Dr. Jasser, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me back.
So your reactions to how the president addressed the Arab leaders in Saudi Arabia and his disposition towards the complicated world of Islamic theocracies generally 100 days in?
I think in the context of after 8 years of the bizarre Iranophilia of Obama administration, the abandonment of the longtime allies that we had, especially in the Sunni world, was very refreshing. I think, for the first time in a long time, we had a president give a speech to the Arab dictators, if you will, or rulers, and not begin and end with apologetics about America being responsible for the problems in the Middle East and bizarre, self-flagellation, but instead tell them what their duties were and that we were in this together. You saw a rebuilding of the coalition of leaders that will need to join us in the battle against ISIS. And I think in the short term, it was a rebooting, a reset of this old relationship. I think that was the positive aspects of it. You know, there were some misses. I think, yes, he did mention Islamic terrorism, Islamist, if you will. But I think there was a significant amount of, even beyond willful blindness, to say that the Saudis are going to have this center for counterterrorism based in Riyadh and acknowledge the fact that their society of theocracy, of Sharia-based systems have no connection and can somehow, that these terrorists come from outer space and then all of a sudden become radicals and they're going to end it, sort of belies the fact that the root cause is this theocratic state where they put people in jail for blasphemy, apostasy, and they have a system of belief that is the beginnings of the process of radicalization. But, you know, I think that may come with time. We can't fix everything right away. There has to be a first step, and this was an excellent first step, I think, from the Trump administration.
Yeah, and I know, you know, the purpose of the trip wasn't to tell them how to live, but you really can't ignore the human rights issues. I mean, women still can't drive. Women can't go into, you know, one reporter from ABC News, Cecilia Vega, she was in front of a McDonald's and she said, I can't walk through this door. I have to go through the family door. And even Toby Keith had a concert that night, but it was for men only.
Yeah, I mean, that, and I actually did not, that you can tell that's sort of the Trumpian isolationism, if you will, that he ran on in his campaign. I missed seeing the words freedom, democracy, liberty. I think that it's not about us lecturing them. It's about us. You know, he did not speak to the people of Saudi Arabia in his speech. And I think it's about us defending the peoples of the world to have the ability to live freely and not be subjects or slaves of their governments. And I think the president missed an opportunity to speak to those people, missed an opportunity to sort of let the world know that it's not 2009, it's not the 20th century, it is the 21st century post-Arab awakening. These countries are roiling from revolutions, from the threat of revolutions, and I think it's America's role as the leaders of the free world to speak to those people who want to be free. And I have to say, as much as it's great to reboot the relationship where, you know, part of the reason ISIS was created and the Syrian revolution was radicalized was because the Saudis and Qataris and Turks radicalized the Sunnis in Syria and fed the wrong groups. But so I think with us now engaged more directly, they will have a much harder time doing that because there will be direct observation and chaperoning more than sort of the abandonment that Obama did. But having said that, I think that speech could have been given by any Republican president in the last century, in the 20th century, and it sort of missed what's been happening in the Middle East since 2011. And I hope in the future we start hearing from the Trump administration the differences since 2011, where you have revolutions and others, that the people he was speaking to their days are numbered. The Muslims of the Middle East and the Islamic religion of the world, I think, is going through a metamorphosis. And the people he was speaking to, when he gave that soundbite, drive them out, I have to tell you, my family and I were chuckling. You know, most of the people in that room probably should have left.
Well, right, but I mean, you've got to deal with the reality on the ground that exists, not what you wish it was. And there were moments in that speech where he essentially made a message, delivered a message to the old guard, many of who were in the room, as you say, about the future of their country and other Islamic republics, the percentage of young people that are victimized by terrorism, Muslims that are murdered by ISIS and the radical Islamic terrors, and the lost opportunity and the yearning that young people have for opportunity. And I don't know if you use the word freedom, but that's essentially what he was seeming to indicate. And so I thought that, you know, it's a delicate deal, right? He has to deliver a message, but he also has this alliance of convenience that has to be forged to deal with the Houthis in Yemen and the Iranians, as you suggested, after 8 years of Iranophilia. And so, boy, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think it's a legitimate point to raise, but I think it's also a very difficult line for the president to walk.
It is. I think, though, after handing them hundreds of billions of dollars of an arms deal, I think they've been waiting now for a partnership that he rekindled. I think he earned a little bit of ability to lecture them, or rather than lecture, but to, in a tough love manner, tell them what needs to be done. And I will tell you, as a Muslim and as an American, I don't see any other way for the defeat of radical Islam with those dictators in place. The reality is that if you want Islam to come to terms with modernity, societies need to exist where their citizens can question the leadership, can be critical of interpretations of the judges in those countries. Women can form organizations and be independent and own property. And, the 2030 plan that even Trump endorsed of the Saudis is another delay tactic for 15 years. They've been having 15, 20 years plans for the last 80 years, and it's an old dictator method to kick the can down the road. And so I think ultimately we're going to, yes, in the short term, this was the best thing to do to reboot and help end ISIS. But if you don't look at the longer term, ISIS will go away in the next year, and we're going to have another radical group that'll rear its head in 3 or 4 years, because the root cause, which is corrupt governance, dictatorship, will continue to stir the cauldron in their societies that prevents the innovation, the independence that's necessary to defeat theocratic Islam.
Yeah, there's no disagreement with that. And I think they learned those 15, 20-year plans from Congress. I think that's where they got the idea. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, he is the president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and served our country honorably as a Navy lieutenant commander, and he's the author of the book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Dr. Jasser, great as always to speak with you. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.